Good morning, friends. I am Sushma Puri, author and founder of the Human Dharma, the right human way of living that helps one live a good life and enrich the whole. The Human Dharma is a book and a US based non-profit religious organization. In continuity to my last book reading video from my book, The Human Dharma, today I will read part of chapter 2, What is a Human? Human, an evolved being. Part 1, Philosophy. Fact analysis, definition, and derivative right way of living. Chapter 2, What is a Human? The human dharma means a human's right way of living or right functions of a human. Right functions of an entity are a set of those functions that ensue from the make of that entity, suit it, and help it flourish. In short, right functions of an entity match its form. Therefore, in order to define the human dharma or right functions of a human, first we need to see what is a human. This issue involves the origin of a human, the entire make of a human, and the context in which a human happens, or the world around a human's whole. A human, first of all, is a living being. Like any other living being, a human is born, lives for a certain number of years, and dies. Like any other living being, a human needs to survive and rejoice in her survival. These two quests, the quest for survival and the quest for happiness, are the two prime quests of every human. Every human wants to survive and every human wants to be happy. Therefore, right functions or the right way of living for a human must contain those functions too that ensure a human's survival and her happiness. Before we analyze the make of a human any further, first let us see the origin of a human or where a human has come from. An answer to this question will throw light on the background of a human form and will help us define the right functions of such a form, a human. Human, an evolved being. A human being is born as a child from a set of her parents, a female mother and a male father. At the time of copulation, the male father's sperm penetrates and fertilizes an egg in the ovary of the female mother. From this process is formed one single cell which contains the DNA, the entire genetic make, a blueprint of all genes of the child. These genes determine the physical appearance and mental and other attributes of the child. The child inherits 50% of her genes from her parents and the other 50% from the ancestors of each of her parents, her mothers and her fathers. Thus, a child is a genetic product of her both parents and their ancestors. Now, the child's mother and father, each in turn, is a genetic product of his own blood parents and their ancestors. The child's mother was born from a set of her own parents, a female mother and a male father, each of whom was born from a set of his own parents, and so on. Similarly, the child's father was born from a set of his own parents, mother and father, each of whom was born from a set of his own parents, and so on. We can visualize a single human child in between, born from a set of her parents, mother and father, each of whom has a long line of ancestors behind her and him. As we keep going back, there is a long line of human ancestors behind each parent of the child who died but left parts of themselves in the form of their genes inherited by the child. We can keep track of a few ancestors, but we assume a long line of human ancestors behind each parent. As we go further and further back, some millions of years back, there comes a point when the child's human ancestors had evolved from and looked like apes and monkeys, as evidenced by the science of anthropology. And as we go further back, the child's monkey ancestors had evolved from other forms of life. All of these are scientific facts evidenced by the science of biology and the science of anthropology, verifiable by any standard college textbook on the subjects or by a reputed encyclopedia. The fact of human evolution was brought to light by a group of interrelated sciences, mainly the science of biology and the science of anthropology. Thousands of scientists, through hundreds of years of research, have proved beyond any doubt that a human has evolved from other forms of life. Science of biology studies the entire phenomenon of life, its origin, its multitudes of living beings, their interrelatedness, and their interdependence. As per biology, life is a vast phenomenon, a continuum that started on the earth some 3.8 billion years ago. In the very beginning, there was no life on the earth. Then, by natural process, some atoms got together and created different molecules of water, hydrogen, oxygen, and other gases, substances conducive to the creation and sustenance of life on this earth. These molecules form the atmosphere on and around the earth, which protected it from the sun's direct light and created the breathing air. Some of these molecules, hydrogen and oxygen, formed water on the earth, the oceans. In the presence of these favorable life conditions, some millions of years later, there sprouted a tiny green plant beneath the waters of the oceans, the very first form of life. Gradually it multiplied, spread up, and gave rise to the vast plant life beneath the oceans. Plants provided more favorable conditions for the growth of other forms of life. After further millions of years, again by natural process, various molecules below the waters got together and formed a one-celled living being, an amoeba. The amoeba eventually gave rise to a multicellular living being like a fish. From the fish, there emerged the amphibian, a form that could live both in waters and on land. Then, after hundreds of thousands of years later, the amphibian gave rise to the reptile, which lived only on land. From reptiles, some 500 million years ago, were born mammals. Mammals multiplied and spread into a large variety of mammals, including primates, gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, the ancestors of the present human. From these ancestors, after millions of years, there emerged a human form. During this entire unfolding of life, we see one form of life changing into another. This is evolution, a gradual process by which one form of life changes into a more complex, better form. The science of biology explains this dramatic change in the form of living beings with the law of natural selection and the theory of genes. By the law of natural selection, a living being develops certain traits good for its survival. It survives, reproduces, and passes off its traits to its offspring through genes. The law of natural selection was first introduced by Charles Darwin in his book On the Origin of Species, published in 1859. Darwin, after years of research, concluded that individuals of any one species are not identical. They differ in their physical and other traits. For example, he observed a large variety of beaks in one species of bird. Some had pointed beaks while others had blunt ones. He noted that individuals with certain traits survive better than others and reproduce their own kinds. But Darwin did not know how. This was explained by the scientists Mendel and Lamarck. Mendel, after years of extensive research and experiments on peas, introduced his theory of genes, how traits of individual are passed off to its children in the form of genes. Lamarck, a French naturalist, further explained the process of evolution with his principle of the inheritance of acquired traits or characteristics. As per Lamarck, changes take place in an organism's structure throughout its lifetime by its use or disuse of certain traits. Also, an organism, in its quest for survival, acquires or develops certain traits good for its survival. These changes are then transmitted to that organism's offspring in the form of genes. For example, an athlete's children will have stronger muscles than average. Applying these principles in the vast unfolding of life from beginning till present resolves the mystery of evolution, one life form changing into another. Life is an interplay between a living being and its response to the constantly changing environment. A living being, in its quest for survival and in response to a changed environment, does away with certain traits and adopts certain new traits that help it survive better. With a little use of imagination, we can see how one form of life changed into another. For example, some millions of years back, maybe the waters dried out in certain parts of the oceans, or few fishes swam to the shore and found no food in shallow waters of the shore. Some of them ventured forth onto the land part of the beach and found food there. Many of them died in the process, but a few survived. They learned how to forage on the beach once in a while to find food. In this process, they developed certain traits like the ability to breathe out of water and some physical structural changes. Their changed traits were passed on by genes to their offspring, who were born with the ability to survive partially on land. With every forthcoming generation, these changes strengthened, and they eventually gave rise to an altogether new form, an amphibian, like a frog, who could live both in water and on land. Some of these amphibians spent more time on land and found that sliding quietly on land was better than hopping to catch prey. They tried to slide rather than hop, which changed their physical structures. They passed on these changes to their children. Very gradually, over millions of years, their forthcoming generations did away with their feet and took to sliding only. This gave rise to a totally different form, a reptile, like a snake. Eventually, a variety of reptiles blossomed and produced their own kinds. By the same process, over the next millions of years, there emerged the bird from the reptile, and then from the bird, the mammal. The mammals survived and thrived in a variety of forms, eventually leading to an ape, the ancestor of the modern human. It was from the ape that we humans and our cousins chimpanzees came forth. All this happened over millions of years. As we noted earlier, the present life with its millions of living species is the outcome of some 3.8 billion years of evolution. That the present human form has evolved from an ape ancestor common to both chimpanzees and us, is further proved by the science of anthropology. The science of anthropology is the study of the humankind. It traces the origin of the present human and her entire physical and cultural evolution. Anthropology bases its findings on the fossils of early human skeletons, footprints, and tools, etc., found in many archaeological diggings. As per anthropology, the present human and chimpanzees evolved from a common ape ancestor some 8 million years ago. In other words, chimps are our closest cousins. This is proved by striking similarities between humans and the chimps' physical structures, genetic make, and behavior. Chimps' facial features such as foreheads, eyes, and jaws strongly resemble ours. Their hands are very much like ours. Though not fully bipedal, they occasionally walk on both feet. Above all, their genes are 97.4% identical to ours, a fact attested to by the science of genetics. Also, chimps' behavior strongly resembles ours. Go to any zoo and observe their behavior for a few minutes. Their piercing gazes, their pondering moods, the way they lie down with arms over their heads. A number of anthropologists, after years of living with chimps and observing their behavior, documented close similarities between chimps and humans' behavior. Chimps' compassionate and social behavior, long-term family and social relationships, highly sensitive natures, and many other traits are identical to ours. After originating from a common ape ancestor some 8 million years ago, chimps and humans started evolving in two different directions. Many fossil findings clearly prove the slow evolution of an ape into the present human. How an ape first became bipedal and thus freed her hands to hold weapons and make tools. How she gradually developed other human-like features like a rounder brain and short canine teeth. How her brain gradually increased in size and she became more and more intelligent. Fossils of footprints at Laetoli in Tanzania, dated some 3 million years old, show how an early human started to walk on 2 feet. These footprints, though not fully human, are remarkably similar to modern humans. Findings from the skeleton of a child found in 1924 in a mining cave in Town, South Africa, show the slow transition of an ape into a human. This skeleton belongs to a transitional form between an ape and a human, who had more human-like features like a rounder brain, short canine teeth, and the position of foramen magnum, evidence of bipedal movement. The Neanderthal findings in 1856 show the early fully developed human form. The Neanderthal species of humans lived some 350,000 years ago in parts of Asia and Europe. They were our grosser forms, massive and stout in build, though they walked upright and had large brains. They used fire and buried their dead. In addition to these, thousands of other fossils clearly evidence the gradual evolution of an ape into the present human. The science of anthropology also traces the entire cultural evolution of humankind from its sheer struggle for survival up to its present comfortable and luxurious living. There are fossils to indicate how a human first scavenged food, that is, ate the food left over by other animals. Then he gradually learned how to make tools and hunt, and finally started growing food on farms. He first covered himself with tree barks and leaves, then learned how to weave cloth and wore coarse hand-spun clothes, finally leading to the finest clothes of today. He first protected himself in dark caves and then learned how to make huts and camps, finally leading to the finest houses of today. It was during the last 12,000 years since humans started living sedentary lives on farms that different human societies and cultures flourished. and made stupendous progress in all walks of the human life. More and more comforts were accumulated, and different branches of art, music, and literature flourished. The human heart and mind reached the pinnacle of their growth and expression. Along with art, music, and literature, there flourished philosophy and science. Dif- um, Different societies in different parts of the world made their contributions in developing each of these. There evolved language and mathematics, while art and religion solaced the human heart and spirit. Philosophy and science raised questions about human existence. Different branches of science developed that solved many riddles about humans, human life, and the world we live in. Science has been a true blessing to the human. Science cleared the mist of human ignorance. The field of medicine provided humans with long and healthy lives. The field of engineering created skyscrapers, dams, and bridges. The inventions of electricity, the car, and the plane, together with countless other scientific inventions, discoveries, and products, provided us with the most comfortable and luxurious living. This sums up the physical and cultural evolution of the human form from the most rudimentary life form to the present human. An amazing, hard to believe saga, but true, brought to light and evidence by the science of biology and the science of anthropology. Thank you, friends. I hope you enjoyed my video. Please like and subscribe it if you did. Also, please feel free to share it. Your comments and questions are welcome. Please join us on Facebook and Twitter. See you soon for my next video. Have a great day.